Hello and welcome to another edition of Inside PressBox presented by Maryland Mutual Mortgage. I'm Stan the Fan Charles, bringing you an action-packed edition of Inside PressBox. There are 4 NFL games this weekend for the wild card round, and PressBox football writers Joe Platani and Matt Zenitz are here to talk about the Ravens' playoff chances. But first, we're going to talk to my friend Jim Henneman about this week's Baseball Hall of Fame vote. He's been a sports writer for more than 40 years and has been a Baseball Hall of Fame voter for more than 20 of those years. Correct, Jim Henneman?
Since 83, yes.
Since 83.
27 years.
27 years.
28 years.
All right. Any surprise to you this year that Roberto Alomar jumped up from, what was it, 71% last year up to 90%?
The jump in percentages was the only surprise. I mean, the 2 guys that went in figured to go in. I think the only surprises were in percentages, both at the top and the bottom. So those were the 2 things that interested me the most.
Alomar, if not for the spitting incident with John Hirschbeck, would he have been an 85, 87% guy last year?
I don't think so, but I think he would have been close to. He'd have been around 80. I think he'd have been upper 70s, maybe low 80s. I think the difference. I think the spitting thing definitely cost him. And there is a faction, there isn't any question about it, there's a faction of people who don't believe in first year ballots. And I think that's why there's such a big jump this year, I think.
One other question about Roberto Alomar. I know players, Latin players, a lot of times there's questions of age. But have you ever seen a player of his abilities, career kind of screech to the halt that his did, where he seemed to lose his skills almost overnight?
I think that, and it did send up some red flags about that, but maybe his age was not quite. But hey, that's been going on for, and if that was or was not true, yes, it did seem that way. And the worst thing for him was where it came to a screeching halt was in New York.
Yeah.
Or that's where it ended, in New York anyhow, but it was already pretty much at a screeching halt.
All right, the other guy that goes in is Bert Blyleven, 287 victories, 250 losses, and career earned run average, 331, and I think he's 5th all-time strikeouts.
5th all-time in strikeouts, and I forget exactly where he is in shutouts, but 9th, I think, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Bert's a guy that he's been on my ballot every year he's been there, but beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and it just took long. It took longer than I thought it should have, but the good thing is that he got in. It's supposed to be tough to get in. It's not supposed to be impossible, however.
All right. Now, talking to you before we went on the air tonight, you think the most interesting thing is next year starts to be a period of 2-3 years where you think this thing's going to be a little bit of a mess.
I think it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
I absolutely think it's going to be a nightmare. And I'm almost willing to go out and make a prediction about next year right now that there'll be nobody that goes in. I think Bernie Williams is the only significant player coming out that will be eligible. I don't see either Larkin or Jack Morris jumping that much in this next year to get to 75. And I think it could be a shutout. I really do. And then if it is, and then the next year
everything all
breaks
the steroid guys.
I mean, everybody comes loose, and now there's going to be a logjam. And I just really think that there's going to be a lot of guys on the ballot that it's going to just take away from everybody else's votes, so that the people that were, if Larkin is not in, maybe Larkin might get in that year, perhaps.
Right.
I don't know, but I think that vote is going to be so divided by people coming in.
Splinter groups.
Because there's going to be, Piazza's in that class, Clemens and Bonds. Put them on the side right now. They're not the only ones. There's a whole bunch of guys that are coming out.
Let me ask you this. I had you on the radio the other day on Fox 1370, and I asked this question. And I don't know who could have been that farsighted to have seen this coming. The players had a choice all along to either back testing or vote down testing, drug testing, as we went along these last 10, 12 years. They were adamant. They just fell in line behind their leadership and thought it was nobody's business. And now chickens come home to roost a little bit, Jimmy?
I think that came back to bite them. Look.
Especially a guy like Palmeiro, who says he only did it this one time unknowingly. if there was a body of tests over 5 to 7 years that showed he'd never tested positive.
Well, and that's a case, again, you're going into the confidentiality of these things. Yeah. I mean, if I was Rafty, I would be wanting to say, look, go back and get all of my tests, throw them out there.
Right.
But number one, once that happens, I mean, they're not going to want that to happen, because then exactly,
the cat's out of the barn.
The domino starts to fall, right, and everything goes. Rafty's has been pretty bland about this for the last 5 years.
He was bland about it for about 4 and
right,
8/10 years.
The passion is coming out a little bit now, and I understand it. He made a statement a long time ago that everybody, subsequent events proved that, hey, maybe that's exactly what happened,
yes,
except they still haven't disproved the Canseco thing about the injection, supposedly.
Right.
And the fact is that he did, I think he understands that, it was kind of stupid to do this, even if it was a clean B12 yeah, injection. I don't know about you, but I'm not letting my wife or anybody else stick a needle in me.
Let me ask you one other thing, though. Palmeiro disappears for 4.5 years. All of a sudden, on the eve of the vote, he's kind of very public about this. Shouldn't he hire PR firm? If he really believes this, isn't it worth it to him to hire PR firm, lawyer, lie detector, independent lie detector test, and get out there? It almost seems a little like OJ saying, I'm going to go out and find the killer of Nicole, and he's never done anything about that.
Well, I think one of the reasons he's out there more now is that because, frankly, guys went and looked for him a little bit more. I mean, and before it's a little bit easier to say. I mean, there's no point in him talking about it 2-3 years ago, because there's no vote coming up. And frankly, at this point, he probably is just as well off. Let this thing play out, and it's going to have to play out down the road, because basically, it's been a baseball problem, but now it's become a Hall of Fame problem. And in all honesty, what's happened is it's been dumped on the voters, basically saying, okay, here, you figure it out. Well, I got news for you. We can't figure it out. We're no smarter than they are.
Hey, if all of a sudden they allowed next year Pete Rose to be eligible, is that a way to get somebody in, or would that be almost too fake to do it?
Well, number one, that won't happen, which doesn't make it hit, because his 15-year period is up. So somebody else.
He's only going in the committee. Yeah.
Somebody else would have to do that. But I'm not so sure. To me, that 15-year period should have been when he was eligible. For us, I mean, he was never on our ballot.
Exactly.
So, we never really had to, as long as you're not on the ballot.
How have you always felt about that? The fact that you were not able to give him thumbs up or thumbs down?
I had no problem with it. Okay. Personally, I had no. In fact, I have a very strong feeling about that. That there were guys that did write-ins, and I think their entire ballot should have been disallowed. I don't. Instead of just disallowing his vote, I think they should have disallowed their entire ballot.
All right, Jimmy. In the remaining time we have, tell me a little bit about what you think of Andy MacPhail's offseason this year.
I think it's been pretty good, and having said that, we've said that a lot in the last offseason. One of our great lines is, we think we've improved the bullpen again. So we have to wait and see. But I think it's been a good offseason. I love Derek Lee.
All right, I do too. Jim Henneman, I love you. You can
Don't spread that around.
I won't spread it around. If you still can't get enough college football, visit csnbaltimore.com. Matt Zenitz has picked players to watch for this weekend's bowl games. To see who he selected, log on to csnbaltimore.com.